Hi there, welcome to Naturally Speaking. I'm your host tonight, Larry Evans, and the subject of our little show is the oyster mushroom and oyster mushroom cultivation here in Montana. We have a nice picture here of the oyster mushroom, Pleurotus austriatus, and we'll be giving a workshop this Saturday about the cultivation of this mushroom. A few of the people who are with me today on the panel, Bradley from the Alliance for the Wild Rockies,
Hello.
and Ginny McCammett from the state horticulturalist here. She's actually with the MSU Extension Office. And Bradley.
Hi, I'm Radley Watkins, and I'm working with the Alliance for the Wild Rockies. The Alliance is a group working to protect biodiversity in the Northern Rockies, and a program like this of raising mushrooms, I feel, is a great way to work within the natural ecosystem using native species and protect our bioregion and protect our water quality and our riparian zone. Seems to be a really great program.
Well, hopefully we'll have some good success in getting landowners interested in raising oyster mushrooms with
Thank
this
you.
type of program. Ginny, have you got something? This is Ginny McCammett with the state horticulturalist here in Missoula.
And I mainly work with growers of all kinds of crops in Missoula County. Some of them are like apples and strawberries and trees and shrubs and grass and also alternative crops such as mint and mushrooms is one of them. Huckleberries is another important alternative crop, and ginseng even, and kabocha squash. It's a whole range. So it's quite an interesting job. I get to learn a lot every day.
Neat, neat. Well, tonight's program is mostly about mushroom cultivation, and not just mushroom cultivation, but primarily the cultivation of oyster mushrooms. We have a few slides here to show you, for example, about different mushrooms that are commonly cultivated for commercial purposes. The first picture that we'll be having in just a second here is of the shiitake mushroom. All right, the shiitake mushroom grows in Japan, where it's a very important commercial species. And here's a nice picture of the shiitake. This grows on oak logs, and many farmers in other regions of the country tend to cultivate this mushroom. Unfortunately, here in Montana, it's a little bit cold and dry for shiitake cultivation. Some people have put up greenhouses, of course, heated with wood stoves to try and make it more amenable. But again, in Montana, since the native substrate is oak, you've got to import the oak trees, you got to import the heat. It seems like there might be better places for that.
Do oak trees grow native in Japan?
Yes, they do.
Well, that's been interesting.
Yeah, in fact, the shiitake, shia is how they say the word oak. Shia take, and take, of course, is mushroom. So, the mushroom that grows on oak.
Huh.
It's a neat little insight there. And another mushroom that is commonly cultivated is this one, the reishi, or Ganoderma lucidum. Now, this mushroom is very important medicinally, and sells for about $50 a pound in Oriental markets. It's touted as a cancer cure and immune stimulant, and there's a large and growing market for this mushroom right now.
What country is this grown in?
This is grown in Japan and also in the United States down south. Some growers in Texas are growing this now.
Do they export those mushrooms?
Yes, they do, and also if you're keen on it, you can go down to the health food stores and pick up tablets made of the reishi mushroom.
How would a mushroom like that fare in Montana?
Well, we have related species that grow up here. and they grow on like hemlock and other trees. But in generally this one, this mushroom, the Ganoderma lucidum, the reishi mushroom, is more of a warm weather climate. It would have trouble with our winters and extra dry summers.
Larry, the director, said we're free to ask questions too. Going back to that picture of the shiitake where it was those long, pieces there. One more maybe.
There we go.
Well, so are those growing there?
Mm-hmm.
Or-
Actually, you can see the some of the little guys coming right off the stump over here. If you can get, if you can zoom in on that or something. That's the mushrooms do grow there, and to
So this is like a greenhouse.
this is a greenhouse, and to cultivate shiitake, you raise and lower the temperature. Shiitake need to be dunked in water and held at about 40 degrees Fahrenheit to stimulate their fruiting. And that's all well and good, but in Montana, we have trouble, in the wintertime anyway, getting the temperature up to 40 degrees Fahrenheit. So it might be a little difficult. There are a lot of problems associated with it in our area. But anyway, the main mushroom of our interest in this program, again, is the oyster mushroom. This mushroom doesn't mind our Montana winters. It grows on the cottonwood trees, which are quite common around the river banks, all along the Bitterroot, Clark Fork, and by golly.
I think the cottonwoods are among the only native trees that grow naturally in this area that are deciduous.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the few.
It's true. Well, one of the few that get really big anyway.
Mhm.
And we found the cottonwoods, throughout the state, even in the eastern part of the state. We've got quite a large population of cottonwoods, and they do pretty much grow exclusively along our riparian areas, next to rivers and whatnot. Here's a shot of the leaf of the cottonwood tree for people who may not be too familiar with it. It's one of our more common species, and here in Missoula you can find it along the irrigation ditches, right out on 3rd Street. I mean,
You can find it along the river in Riverfront Park, or anywhere along the Clark Fork River. You can find it in Greeno Park, growing there naturally.
a lot of them in Greeno Park.
There's quite a bit of variation in the leaf shape.
It's so beautiful this time of year.
Yeah, indeed. At any rate, these cottonwood stands, and especially the dead cottonwood trees, are the perfect habitat for the oyster mushroom. The oyster mushroom is not a parasite on trees. It grows on dead cottonwood trees, and it can. We find this pretty commonly occurring naturally in cottonwood stands here in the state. The idea of our program of the workshop this weekend will be to show people how to encourage the growth of this oyster mushroom, and since it's a naturally occurring mushroom, kind of encourage the mushroom to grow in the parts of the state where it's already commonly found. Here's a nice example of the perfect environment for an oyster mushroom. It's a cottonwood tree that's just met with a little tragedy, and as we can see with this close-up, the bark is still fresh, and the tree is just recently dead. At this point, the cottonwood is susceptible to a large number of different species of mushrooms, which will attack the dead wood. And in order to encourage the oyster mushroom, we tend to pop off a little bit of the bark with a hatchet or axe or even a knife in some cases. And then in this area where you see the where you see the split in the log, we'll hop in and insert a little bit of mushroom.
Are mushrooms sort of like vultures in that they prefer a fresh kill?
Yeah, they do. Partly because the recently dead mushroom the recently dead tree still has a lot of water, still has plenty of fresh dissolved sugars in the cambium layer and things like this. Whereas something that's set for a while, dried out, is only the tougher mushrooms, the Dedalias and some of the ornery polypores will kind of attack just about anything that's got cellulose. But for both the oyster mushroom and the lion's head, which we'll look at later, it's a very good bet to
Well-
use fresh wood.
What's the likelihood of having the oyster mushroom move into your prime conditions rather than a different species of mushroom?
You mean just by accident?
After you make your incision in the log, are you likely to have a variety of species move in, or is it?
Sure. When you inoculate by a crude technique like this hatchet job here, you can't really expect pure culture to result. I've found dependable results between 10 and 25% of the inoculations that I do just with dead oyster mushrooms jammed in the bark of a tree. About, between 10% and 1/4 of all the ones that I inoculate survive or produce fruit.
Great.
And that's not bad, considering you can do 10 in a minute.
Sure.
Do you get other mushrooms growing in the places where you inoculated with the oyster mushroom?
Very rarely. If the oyster mushroom doesn't take, usually nothing's going to take. The oyster mushroom is a pretty good bet for two reasons. One, it's a pretty aggressive mushroom. I mean, it will grow in conditions that other mushrooms shy away from. For example, Montana. Okay. On the other hand, when you've got an open wound like this, you are probably making your tree more susceptible to other infections.
Your dead tree.
Your dead tree, yes. And well, let's take one more look at the slides here. We've got the.
Larry,
Yeah.
excuse me, I've asked you in times gone by, and I'm sorry if this question is out of order here, but what are the chances of any kind of a, cultivated mushroom industry in Montana, employing people and where it would make,
Well, I'd like to say that that's a possibility. It's something I would sure like to see happen.
could it happen?
The limiting factor, of course, is going to be markets for mushrooms. I think as a culture, we Americans tend to be kind of mycophobic. Okay, we're a little bit afraid of anything fungal, and as a result, I mean, we've grown up as kids being told, "Don't eat that. That's a mushroom and it's poisonous." So we do have a bit of a task, as it were, to try and educate or inform people about the large number of delicious edible species that we do have growing naturally and that can be cultivated here in the state.
Well, Larry, am I wrong in thinking that here in Missoula, I've probably seen the oyster mushroom for sale at our farmer's market?
Yes, that's been for sale at the farmer's market for about 3 years now.
Great.
Various groups have been bringing that into market and selling it there. It's probably one of the most dependable mushrooms in terms of identification. There's really nothing else that looks quite like an oyster mushroom, and it's a large white fleshy mushroom, and it does have the prominent gills underneath. It has a nice fishy, almost floral type of aroma,
Ah.
and it dries well. So it's
How do people cook with it?
well, the oyster mushroom is quite good in a number of ways. I like to cut it into strips and dip it in egg batter, roll it in flour and pepper, and throw it on the fire. And, you know, there you go. You've got some nice fried breaded mushrooms. A lot of people chop it up and put it in soup. It does have that fish-like quality, and when it gets cooked in a soup, it does very well. So, next, no? Well, let's see, where are we here? Okay. The, one of the reasons that we have done this program, and the reason that the State Department of Natural Resources and Conservation has extended a grant to cover these workshops, is because one of the main problems in the countryside with water pollution is animal interference on the stream. In other words, cattle walking into the river, defecating in the river, and, you know, contaminating the water supply in various different ways. The state is now trying to work with agriculturalists to encourage them to exclude cattle from sensitive riparian areas. And of course, this is a task which takes some money.
What happens when the cattle and the mushrooms share the riparian area together?
Well, the cattle don't mind, but the mushroom doesn't exactly benefit. When you have the cattle and mushrooms in areas, in my experience, I've been, I guess you'd say, nature crafting these wild mushrooms for about 4 years now. And when the cattle are in the same enclosure as the oyster mushroom, they tend to walk on, eat, defecate on the mushrooms, and generally render them undesirable, at least.
Just as almost they do to any other natural vegetation in the riparian area.
Well, it's, you know, I think cattle, like anything else, are a resource that wants to be managed in a useful way. You can see on this, the next slide here, just an example of why we are hoping to be able to exclude cattle from the immediate area of mushroom production, is that on the left side is the state land where the cottonwood stand is, and on the right side of the picture is private land where the cattle are run. And the left side, you know, in this case, definitely does provide a more desirable environment for cultivating mushrooms. It's, you know, again, there's a lot of other factors, but the desirability of erecting a fence near the water supply, and the fact that the mushrooms benefit from the exclusion of cattle kind of works together in this program.
Sure.
So we're hoping that this will, you know, the effect of this will be positive overall. And there it is again. There's the oyster mushroom. Feel free to give us a call here at 542-MCAT. We've got, we're talking about oyster mushrooms and the possibilities for cultivating them here in western Montana, and we'd like to hear your opinions or your objections. So
is just about anybody's land that has cottonwoods ready to go with the oyster mushroom?
yeah, with a really short bit of information, it would be pretty easy to start growing oyster mushrooms, or maybe start harvesting oyster mushrooms that you already have on there.
Sure.
This weekend, I'll be giving a workshop sponsored by the Department of Natural Resources and Conservation, and free to anyone who's interested to attend, down at the Teller Wildlife Refuge. That'll be, we'll have programs at 10, 12, and 2 o'clock during the day. It's a short program, doesn't last more than an hour, and we can take you out in the woods and show you how to inoculate with oyster mushrooms and give you a supply of enough mushrooms to get started on your own, so.
How does the life cycle of the oyster mushroom grow? When does a spore inoculation happen in nature, and then what happens over the winter, and then when does the mushroom start growing, and how does that all work?
Good question. The oyster mushroom generally fruits in the fall. We also get secondary fruiting, as we say, in the spring.
What does fruiting mean?
Fruiting is when the mushroom erupts, or the mushroom produces a fruiting body, or
Spores?
makes our visible mushroom. And you can see from these mushrooms on the underneath part where the gills are, they emit a dust-like spores. Now these spores are wind-borne. They land on an injury on a tree, or more likely on a freshly broken or dead tree, and the spores germinate and begin to grow through the medium, through the wood in this case.
What time of year does this happen?
This is happening right now.
Oh,
As
it
we
is.
speak, they're out there sporulating and germinating and crawling through the wood. Ooh, just gives you the shivers, huh? I tell you. But this also happens in the spring. Also, many small insects, such as box elder beetles, make their home in the oyster mushroom, get covered with spores, and go fly off in another place. And as beetles and other insects tend to do in the wintertime, they head towards the base of a tree, or head underneath a log to find the warmest, driest place they can, carrying the spores of the oyster mushroom with them. And at this point, when they freeze or whatever, then the oyster mushroom can germinate on the insect's body or in the tree where the insect is sought shelter, and is spread in that way too.
Oh, neat.
Do they flower in the spring or fall, just the fall?
Both the spring and the fall. It seems to be kind of dependent on things like moisture and, availability of water. If we have a dry spring, we see virtually none. If we have a wet spring, we may have oyster mushrooms for a week or 3 weeks, depends. In the spring, they're a little bit less desirable as a food, because the insects seem to get to them a lot faster. Temperatures are generally warmer. And to tell you the honest truth, this fall hasn't been a very good year for our pal the oyster, because the temperatures dropped quickly, and as soon as the rains that we had all summer, where'd they go? Huh? The rains avoided us, and we've had sunny days and very cold nights, and that's not much of a combination for mushroom growth. We need more moisture. Last year was a great year. Got cold, but it was plenty wet, and we hauled in the oysters in bunches.
Couple of questions.
Yeah.
You said inject, did you say inject the spores? You would show, at the workshop, you would show people how to,
Introduce.
okay.
Maybe I said
Put it
inject.
in?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that hatchet is a little crude to be called an injection, but I probably did use that word.
But I mean, is it like sending away for bees? You can send away for these cultures, mushroom cultures, and get them.
Hey, here in Montana, you shouldn't have to look far. Just about, there's at least 24 sites right here inside the Missoula city limits where oyster mushrooms are fruiting right now. And I would say that, with a little bit of practice, take a look at your field guide, and feel free to call in about, for help with identification. It's a very easy mushroom to identify. If you do have questions about it, of course, we'll be at the farmer's market usually to do mushroom IDs, things like that.
When's the best time to pick it for taste? Is it before they start sporulating or after?
I would say the best time to pick them is before all the bugs get in them.
Okay.
And that's usually, I'd say we're nearing the end of the optimum time. The last 2 weeks have been prime for getting mushrooms, and you know, the next week or so, it'll still be possible.
How does a person tell when a oyster mushroom is spoiling? How can you tell?
You can pick up one of the leaves underneath here, okay? You can lift up underneath the actual mushroom itself and see a white spore deposit underneath, okay? You can kind of see it here in the picture, but again, through the
Move that.
miracle of both television and my nasty-looking slides, it's a little hard to see where the spore print ends and the mushroom begins. But these mushrooms do have a distinct white spore print.
It's like the mushrooms in the grocery store, they have dark brown spores, the
Right,
regular
dark brown
mushrooms.
underneath.
Mhm.
And these are white underneath. They may get a little grayish as they get old,
Okay.
but you'll definitely notice a white deposit, almost like someone has spray painted underneath the mushroom,
Mhm.
maybe on the leaves and duff on the forest
Oh.
floor.
Is it
Yeah.
true that the mushrooms in the grocery store, you'll turn them upside down and you'll see this little ring of soft tissue when that, around the base of the stem, when that separates from the stem, does that mean it's less fresh?
Well, it's a more mature mushroom.
Yeah.
It's further along. The mushrooms start as a button and then expand as they get older. But it's more an indication that the mushroom was older before it was picked rather than after.
So for cooking quality, which should a person choose? Should they choose one with the cap intact or?
Well, I don't know. I would suggest, you know, trying different species rather than just good old store-bought mushrooms myself. But it's yeah, there's quite a few varieties now that are available.
I
What is-
think,
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was gonna say that, I think that,
Oh.
working with Montana becoming so developed and all the people moving to our beautiful state here, this is a great opportunity for us to start working within a natural system. And people that are already living in Montana make money off of our natural beauty rather than make money destroying our wild habitat.
What's the, for people, what's the food value or health values of mushrooms? Like
Well,
what's-
oyster mushrooms are one of the most studied of our edible mushrooms. They are naturally high in fiber. They have a very low carbohydrate content, but they have about as much protein as beans, as opposed to grain or other types of
I mean, the
other food
quality of the
sources.
protein is similar to the quality of protein in beans.
No, the mushrooms supply all 9 of the amino acids that we can't produce.
Uh-huh.
And in that respect, they're considered a complete protein. They have by weight, by dry weight, a comparable amount of protein to a bean. We got a caller here.
Wait. I gotta do it out there.
Oh, okay.
Hold on.
Well, I pushed the button already, so I guess.
Uh-oh.
Push the
Sorry.
bottom one again.
Push the button.
Okay. So I probably hung up on him, huh?
Call in again.
Calling again there, callers. That was my fault. Sorry about that. But
We'd like to hear your question.
we sure would like to hear your question because I can't think of it myself.
How much,
Mhm.
how many pounds of mushrooms can you expect to harvest off of a single downed cottonwood?
Well, I've seen as much as 100 pounds off a single tree. And it's not unusual at all to find 15 or 20 pounds of oyster mushroom on a single log.
Just wait.
Okay, we just have to wait here for a minute.
Suspense.
We should talk about the
Coming up
upcoming
events
events
at the Teller
at
Wildlife
the Tawa,
Refuge.
yeah.
Okay, after this.
Line
call.
1.
Line 1. Hello, you're on the air.
Hi, I was wondering if planting oyster mushrooms in your your cottonwood grove damages the trees or kills the live trees.
Okay, thanks. Actually, I just corresponded with Don Mathry, the MSU plant pathologist, and he's assured me that there's no danger to living cottonwood trees from oyster mushrooms or oyster mushroom cultivation because they grow exclusively, to his knowledge, on dead cottonwood trees.
Living trees have many mechanisms for repelling pests that we are not aware of, and one of the things that is indicative of this is, I don't know if you heard about the recent study where they compared wooden cutting boards with plastic ones, and the wooden cutting boards were much more sanitary because they have some kind of antibacterial mechanism that plastic doesn't have. And I think the same would extend to a living tree.
Sure, yeah. They got antibiotics or antibodies circulating to take out invaders. Makes sense, sure. Are you still there, caller?
Yeah.
Do you,
I was also wondering, I had planted some Hericium, the lionhead, in some cottonwoods, but there's also oysters around, and I was wondering how they compete with the oyster mushroom.
Okay, we have a picture of the Hericium mushroom on the screen now. The Hericium mushroom is another very desirable species that we're hoping to introduce, or I should say expand the role of in western Montana. And in terms of as a desirable species, I personally prefer the Hericium. I think it's a very delicious mushroom. But I'm afraid that it's a little trickier to cultivate. Have you had luck cultivating it there, caller?
A few little ones have popped out, but nothing really big.
So you've inoculated with Hericium and you've been able to get successful results.
Yeah, not as big results as I was expecting, but something. But like I say, they got a lot of competition. I think I'm wondering if those oysters will move in.
Well, the oyster mushroom is certainly more aggressive than the Hericium. It grows quite a bit more quickly, and it seems to be better adapted to the environment. All I can say is encourage your Hericium as much as you can. It certainly is a marvelous mushroom.
Okay.
All right, thanks for calling.
Bye-bye.
So, Larry, do you actually plant these mushrooms into the down trees, or do you release spores into the trees?
Using the old hatchet job technique that I showed you there earlier, I've using this hatchet technique. I have inoculated mushrooms quite successfully, and in fact, these mushrooms here are an example of an inoculation.
I see.
I started doing this back in early 1980s, and then again when I came back to Missoula in about 1990, and I've been inoculating with great success.
Do you inoculate with spores or actual mushrooms?
The easiest way and the fastest way that I've found is just to take actual mushroom fruiting bodies and plant them right in between the bark and the wood layer. Other people have used techniques like taking a maul or a wedge and splitting the tree open, stuffing the mushroom inside, and then popping the maul out, and the tree closes right back up on it. This is great. Also, I tend to use oyster mushrooms that are infected with bugs that have infestations of various insects. And of course, these little guys, at this point, they become my friends and help disperse the spores around the log.
How long does it take from the time you put the spores into the tree to the time you get to pick a mushroom?
The fastest that has ever happened for me, personally, was I planted some in the fall of 1991 and harvested in the spring of 1992.
So it takes
So-
at least a year, sometimes a
Well,
little
fall
longer.
to spring, so this was
Okay.
really just over winter. The more, I mean, I get real dependable results within a year.
Huh. So do you usually, like, put the spores on the top of the log, or on the sides, or underneath?
Again, I try to make sure that the mushroom is inside. You know, I will take it to the point of getting that right inside and ram it underneath the
Is that
bark,
on the
and then
in-
folding it back down.
Yeah, but is that on the side of the log, or on the top, or
Oh,
underneath?
I see what you mean. To tell you the truth, I've tried it all around the log, and it seems like inoculating from the end works pretty well.
Huh.
Inoculating along the side seems to work. I haven't really noticed any difference between the side, the top, the bottom.
Would you
Okay.
prefer a sunny side or a shady side of the?
Again, usually when you're looking at any of our riparian areas here, you're looking at a place that's in mixed sun and shade.
Sure.
So that's, you know, again, that seems to be the environment that it's found in naturally, so why mess with Mother Nature?
Why
So-
mess with Mother Nature?
It works, there you go. So,
Should we mention,
yeah, this weekend, when we have the mushroom cultivation seminar, down at the Teller Wildlife Refuge, the Alliance for the Wild Rockies will also be having a series of workshops.
we are going to be having our 8th annual Alliance for the Wild Rockies rendezvous down at the Teller Wildlife Refuge. And this rendezvous will start at about 6 o'clock on Friday afternoon and go through the whole weekend. And some of our more interesting events that we'll be having the very famous David Brower giving our opening ceremonies.
Neat.
Yes.
Who's David Brower?
David Brower is one of the most famous environmentalists alive today. He
Sierra
founded
Club and,
he founded Earth Island Institute and was a big part of the Sierra Club for a long time. And we're very excited to hear him speak. And he's very very powerful speaker, and we're really excited to have him.
neat.
Some of the other lectures that we'll be giving during the weekend, we'll be talking about preserving the biodiversity in the Wild Rockies, and that's on Friday at 6:30. Campaign for the Wild Rockies, where our director, Mike Bader, will be speaking. On Saturday, we're talking about the wild humans, the new conservation movement, the plague of the salmon and the bull trout, habitat for large mammals in the Wild Rockies, the development of impact on grizzly bears, the timber harvesting effects on water quality, and the economic values of the Wild Rockies. Those are all things going on Saturday. Wolf recovery in the Wild Rockies, and we'll go through on Sunday till about noon, and it should be a really, really great weekend. There's camping on the Teller Wildlife Refuge for $5 a night. There are rooms available too. There can be meals, and should be a great time. We'll be able, in between lectures, go check out the mushroom talk and
Sure.
see how to
Why
raise
not?
mushrooms.
You bet.
Should be a good
You bet.
time on the Teller Wildlife
Excellent.
Refuge.
I don't know if we have a caller or not. We seem to have a light flashing on the phone. I'll give it a try. Doesn't look good to me. Okay. All right. Let's get back here to some of the reasons. Here we go. One other mushroom that we'll be discussing this weekend is the Hericium coralloides. The Germans call this mushroom der Schwan, the swan. And- Okay. And this mushroom can be cultivated on poplar just as easily as the cottonwoods, or just as easily as the oyster
Line one.
mushroom. Okay, we do have a caller now on line one. Maybe not. How about line two? How about not line two?
They'll call again. There they are. Try it.
Okay, I think I'll try it this time. Hello, you're on the air.
Yeah, I just want to congratulate you guys.
Thanks.
That was nice. Someone called to congratulate us. I don't quite understand, but, yeah.
Larry,
Well,
what's,
it's-
excuse me, what's
Yeah.
the dimensions of what we're, what's the dimensions of what we're looking at on this slide?
This mushroom here is about the size of a good-sized basketball or beach ball. They're called the lion's head, Hericium coralloides,
Wait.
because of its size and because it does look kind of like a mane. You notice the little projectile sticking out with the tiny teeth hanging down. And this mushroom has the flavor of shrimp, and it's very good. In fact, I like to make a mock shrimp cocktail out of this, and dip them in cocktail sauce. The other possibility is,
One.
yes, frying them up with walnuts. They're great. We got a caller here on line 1, so, hello, you're on the air.
Hello, Larry. I have got a question about chanterelles. Can you cultivate those here in Montana?
Well, as far as I know, nobody has successfully cultivated chanterelles anywhere. Chanterelles, like many other mycorrhizal mushrooms, grow in relationship with the tree roots, and they're dependent on a living tree to produce their fruiting bodies.
And I was at a talk you gave about truffles about a year ago. Have you done anything more with those this year?
We have had a real exciting season for truffles this year. We had about 12 or 14 new species or unreported species, previously unreported species, turn up here in Montana. We have, I'm still awaiting identification of a couple of them because we need, microscopic analysis and whatnot. But it looks like we now have tuber californicum, the California truffle here in Montana, as well as the berry truffle, and also something with the rather unappealing name of the grizzly truffle.
Okay, I was lucky enough to find some at a very high altitude here in Montana, right up at the top of a pass. And I have got some pictures I'll bring by at the farmer's market one of these days. Those would help.
That would be great. Always eager to see what new stuff is turning up. And if I think that truffles especially, because in the past we've known so little about them here in Montana, it's a real exciting subject. I'm sure you're aware, caller, that the economic value of truffles is tremendous, and if that we are able to develop a reasonable supply of truffles in Montana, that could really change the way that we look at especially our old growth stands of timber. We've got another caller. Is that it for you?
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, bye.
What do I do? Hello, you're on the air.
Yeah, I was wondering if there's some kind of a picture book or whatever available so you know which kind of mushrooms are safe for you and which ones you want to stay away from.
Sure, there's probably just about as many books on mushrooms as there are mushrooms. But yeah, we've got there's several good ones. Simon & Schuster has a nice, easy-to-use picture book. The Audubon Society has put out a more comprehensive guide, which some people find a little confusing. And of course, David Aurora's The Bible of Mushrooms, The Mushrooms Demystified, is not exactly a pocket guide, but certainly comprehensive.
Now, what's the most dangerous? I mean, what could they do to you? The bad kind.
The bad kinds of mushrooms?
I mean, do you just hallucinate, or could they kill you?
Oh, well, the bad, none of the mushrooms we've been talking about tonight are going to give you any side effects at all.
I just kind of caught the
but-
tail end there just the last few
Yeah.
minutes, and it spurred my curiosity.
Sure. We've been mostly talking about the oyster mushroom and with a little bit about the Hericium, the mushroom that's on the screen right now. And discussing the possibility of cultivating these in the cottonwood areas along the riverbanks and whatnot.
Okay. Well, thanks for your help.
Yeah.
Why, sure. Thanks for calling.
Yeah. The wrong species of mushroom can kill somebody. It just takes a little bit. So you have
Certainly.
to be very careful about identification. If you're not sure, find someone who's trained in it and who knows. There's nothing wrong with asking questions.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, we're certainly not without poisonous species here in Montana, but actually, partly because of our slightly more severe environment, shall we say, we are not blessed with quite as many poisonous species as, say, California or the eastern seaboard. Still, eating mushrooms randomly is just about as foolish as eating plants randomly, and I see very few people out, sampling the forbs that grow by the side of the road. So I would hope that people are equally sensible and cautious when they go and pick mushrooms.
You want to teach your little children not to eat the mushrooms until they get a little older.
Can I go
Yeah.
back just for a second? I'm always interested in the economics of crops, and I know I've asked you about this not only tonight but before, or in times gone by, and I can recall reading Department of Agricultural statistics, and that mushrooms, in terms of the space, that the value of a mushroom crop per acre is the highest value, whether it's higher than corn, it's higher than wheat, it's higher than beans, etc.
Mm-hmm.
So now I know you're speaking tonight more about, domestic cultivation and
Mhm.
hunting and gathering in our natural environment. But everybody in the country, when they go in the A&P, shops for that little thing of mushrooms.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you've also said to me before when I've asked this question, well, the heating is a problem. You have to keep these greenhouses heated. But maybe the extension person also has, is there is there a potential for us going commercial with mushrooms in Montana?
There most certainly is, but as of now, it is illegal in the state of Montana to buy or sell mushrooms. This is a problem because it's going on and it's not regulated, and that poses a threat to our consumers. And what I would like to see happen is to have a system for inspecting mushrooms set up so that to protect the consumer, and also it would gain credibility to the mushroom industry. The mushroom industry itself, like many other industries, could support the inspection costs so that the government wouldn't be further taxed. Politically, it's a real tough move. It's going to have to take a big groundswell to get this going. And another thing that people might consider is, like, the huckleberry industry is also an industry that depends on a native habitat for harvesting. We haven't figured out how to grow huckleberries either on a large scale. And if we could join forces with cottage industries like that, they're totally unregulated also, then we could gain a great deal of credibility and charge even more for the product.
But down the road, we could see an alternative way of land use that
Mhm.
brings in more money than timber
Mhm.
harvesting or raising cattle
Yes.
with these mushrooms. Is that?
Well, mushroom, I think that one point to look at, when McCarthy brought up the point that mushrooms are one of the most cost-efficient types of agriculture. They produce the most per acre. Even in the limited range that we're talking about enhancing oyster mushroom productivity here, we're looking, based on current wholesale prices in San Francisco, okay, you could easily produce upwards of 500 pounds of oyster mushrooms on an acre. And that means over $500. So the economic potential here is quite, quite justified.
It's realized by Oregon because they do have a system set up for regulating mushrooms.
Mm-hmm.
And so they could, mushroom pickers from Oregon come over to Montana, reap the
Right.
harvest, and sell it in Montana. The economics, the money leaves Montana
Exactly.
because they do have an effective regulatory system there.
That's true. This the same has happened in Washington, where the actually commercial harvest has been proposed to be outlawed completely, and also in the state of Michigan. I would say that of the 3 or 4 states, California being kind of a nightmare right now of regulation and cross-regulation. Michigan's is probably the simplest, most straightforward, and most defensible. The state of Michigan recognizes a person who is anyone who is being employed as a mushroom identifier or mushroom selector has the option to apply to the state of Michigan for a permit to do this legally. At this point, the state, without having to screen the individual, without having to set up a series of tests or put inspectors on site to check every individual mushroom, all of which are financially ridiculous, they can regulate the industry simply by issuing a permit to the person who's doing the identifying. Should any problems with that person's identification arise, the state then has the option to pull that person's permit and deny them the right to trade in mushrooms. At this point, it starts to sound like something as basic as an elk permit, as a hunting permit, or something like this, that the responsibility of identification is going to rest on the person who's selling the mushroom, as opposed to trying to enact some regulatory body with experts and certification procedures and other ideas.
But they do have certification procedures and regulations, like in the fruit industry. I know that for a fact.
Yes.
Because fruit is a big industry and there's a lot of bucks, and they want to make sure that their product is going out. If it's labeled as a certain quality, they want to make sure. And the farmers are the ones who are most insistent on this, even though some of the farmers are not
Make
as
sure
good
they're
as
New
the
Zealand
others.
apples.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, or, yeah, it's a very complex issue.
Sure. Well, I don't think anybody is eager to invite regulation of any industry. But on the other hand, when you're looking at mushrooms, you're looking at something that doesn't have any legitimacy right now in the state of Montana. And because it's recognized in other states, people who are interested in doing business in Montana mushrooms will take them to another state, and Montana will forfeit that revenue. So it's, although it may or may not be in the interest of the people in the industry, it's certainly the interest of the people of Montana and probably the state of Montana to recognize that this industry is taking place.
How quick do you think that sort of recognition could take place? How long would it take something like that to come about?
Depends
Well,
on politics.
There's a lot.
yes, I mean, you know, we all know how exceedingly fine the wheels of politics grind.
Sure.
They go very, very fast or very, very slow, and they
But
don't have much in
certainly-
between.
They certainly grind, yes.
Well, what would be the fight against regulating mushrooms?
There's a great fear. I've talked to some of the higher-ups, and I can understand their concerns, and I must say I identify with some of them. Because if you get someone who says, oh, I can identify mushrooms, and is just a charlatan, you can use charlatans in any industry.
Sure.
And they want to say, okay, I'll sell these mushrooms for $500 a pound or whatever. And they go and make a big profit real quick, and then they sell these poisonous mushrooms. That's a serious concern. So
Sure.
they don't have the ability or training anywhere in the government to be able to know who's honest, who's not, who's legit, who's not. And so they don't even want to touch up the 10-foot pole.
I see.
That's where they're coming from, and I can understand it. They don't have any funds to do this either.
Sure.
And it looks like they're going to have fewer funds.
We got a call, is this?
We'll see in a minute.
We'll see, okay.
Another thing, another regulation that is important that's been recently passed is that the USDA has a recent regulation. If you make, I think it's $15,000 worth selling any kind of commodity, be it mushrooms or kohlrabis or parsnips, you have to have a certificate with USDA.
Wait.
No? Another false alarm. Oh, the joys of telecommunications. Line 4?
No, 4 minutes.
4 minutes. Do we have a call? That's the other question.
Wait a
Ju-
minute.
Just to pursue that old horse of mine a little bit farther,
Uh-huh.
what about commercial mushroom greenhouses in Montana? Is that worth? I know
Again, it
that's
would
not
depend on the
exactly a-
species. A lot of people are cultivating shiitake mushrooms on a commercial basis and doing it fairly well. I would say that Montana is just probably not the ideal place to do it because of your temperature extremes and the lack of moisture.
You've got a big heating
Line
bill
one.
with greenhouses.
Yeah.
And it seems
okay.
like our natural environment is so perfect for it.
Yeah. We do have a caller on line 1, so.
With 2 minutes to go.
Hello, caller.
Hi, I was just wondering what the mushrooms in the store are called. I was just wondering.
Yeah, the name of the mushrooms in the store, Agaricus bisporus. Agaricus is the genus name, and bisporus is the species name. We also have a variety called Portobello, which is also Agaricus bisporus, but I guess a good metaphor would be a hybrid. It's a specially devised strain of Agaricus.
Sort of like a cultivated variety of strawberries. Well, this is a cultivated variety of mushrooms.
Yeah, the portobellos, and they're usually allowed to ripen much further. They're bigger
Huh.
mushrooms.
Which tastes the best in spaghetti sauce?
They all taste good.
Boy, my favorite is the Boletus edulis. Or I'd even go with some swillis in a spaghetti sauce.
So they're not everyday common words, they're just not mushrooms, and they have genuses, and there are hundreds and millions of types of mushrooms.
We got about 5,000
Wow.
in our area, and out of those 5,000, less than 500 are considered food. The other 4,000 and something are either too small, too woody, too nasty tasting, or smell like something that we wouldn't want to put in our mouth.
Or poisonous.
Or poisonous. Yeah, that too. Okay. Well,
Thanks.
thank you very much, caller, and that looks like it. Do we have another call on line 2? We'll try. Nope. Okay. Good. Well,
Minute and a half.
thank you very much, folks. We've enjoyed our little presentation tonight. I hope that you're all able to find some time to come on down this weekend to the Teller Wildlife Refuge. Maybe check out the Alliance for the Wild Rockies rendezvous program, and if you'd like, attend this free workshop on oyster mushrooms.
And, should we mention where that is exactly, the Teller Wildlife Refuge?
Sure.
5 miles north of Hamilton? Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
5 miles north of Hamilton. I guess I'm not.
You'll see the signs from Highway 93. They'll direct you off to the, coming from Missoula, they'll direct you off to the left.
Great.